Shevet Achim Yachad Hinei Matov U'Manahim Shevet Achim Yachad Hinei 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 Hinei
Shabbat Shalom. It is so good to be here with you this evening. We're back in the Beit HaT'filah. I'm joined this evening by Tim Brogdon. I am Aaron Meyer, and I'm so excited. We can pray together, we can be together in virtual community, but from our sacred space. It's good to be back, and we continue to work on the technology that will allow us to welcome you back soon. We continue welcoming Shabbat in song and in prayer, words of Psalm 148, and we turn it back to Tim.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Adonai min hashamayim, Hallelujah, b'amromim, Hallelujah, kol malachav, Hallelujah, kol tzedakav, Hallelujah, shemas yivareach, Hallelujah, kol kofeor, Hallelujah, shmei hashamayim, b'mayim, Hashem al Hashemayim. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, et Shem Adonai ki hu tziva v'nivrahu v'ayam edim lad leolam lo natan v'lo yavor.
Shabbat Shalom to everyone who are joining us. Addie and Noah, Tara and Alan and Mom, it is good to see you. Lynn and Ron, it is good to see you as well, and to wish you a belated happy anniversary. And everyone who is joining us in this sacred space, if you have candles available, I invite you to pull them out, to light them as we light ours. The blessing can be found on page 2 in your prayer book. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Indeed, it is Shabbat and not Yom Tov, the first Friday in a while. That is holy because it is Shabbat, holy because we can be together, holy because we begin reading again from Parashat Bereshit, and not because it is a holiday, which makes our Kiddush on page 5 sound familiar as well. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei puri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho, b'ahava v'ratzon inchilanu, zicharon l'maaseh Reshit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, v'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, v'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat. L'chaim. I invite you now to join us on page 20 as we continue our welcoming one another with the comments that you're sharing on Facebook and YouTube, welcoming them by reaching out by telephone or text to those in your circle, welcoming the Sabbath herself with words of Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi, Grammie, and they Shabbat, Mekabela, Lecha Dodi, Grammie, and they Shabbat, Mekabela, Shamor v'zachor b'reberecha. Emanuel hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, B'shem el tiferet ve'litila lecha Adoni, Likrat Shabbat, Enei Shabbat, Nekabela lecha Adoni, Likrat Shabbat. Enei Shabbat, nekavela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelchas, ki mekor havracha, nerosh meketem neslucha, omase b'machshavat chila, lecha Dodi, Likrat Shabbat. Enei Shabbat, nekabela lecha Dodi, Likrat Shabbat. Enei Shabbat, nekabela. Izoreri, ki va'orech miuri. Dabari, kavod Adonai alayik nigla, lecha Dodi, Likrat Shabbat, Enei Shabbat, nekabela lecha Dodi, Likrat Shabbat, Enei Shabbat. בשלום עטרת פלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, חמוני עם סגולה, בואי כלה, בואי כלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, עיני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, עיני שבת נקבלה.
It is wonderful to be able to turn off my mic, to be able to sing and dance while we're back in our sacred space. And I hope you're allowing yourself the same pleasure as we turn to page 24 in our prayer books. There we find words of Shalom Aleichem as we continue to greet Shabbat, this time greeting God's ministering angels. And I invite you to continue your welcoming to everyone in the community.
Shalom Aleichem. Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Mimele, Malachi Hamalachi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem LeShalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Malachi Hamalachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeShalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon, Melech Malachi Hamalachim, HaKadosh Shalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon, Mimele, Malachi Hamlachi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
On page 26, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah v'amad yivrach hirtei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedecho Beit Yisrael bagala bagala uv'izman kariv v'imiru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam ulal me'omaya yitbarach yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithalev v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru Amen. Page 28, our Baruch Hu praise, our call to worship.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. mevorak, ha-mevorak, le'olam va'ed.
Have you picked up a good book lately? Are you reading anything that has caught your eye? Emily and I recently returned from a bit of R&R after the holidays, and I got to sink my teeth into a number of books. I read Rage by Bob Woodward, and to balance it out on the political spectrum, I read Blackout by Candace Owens. I had a chance to read Running the Rift. I read the new Daniel Silva book. I read anything I could get my hands on, including a book called Settings of Silver about the writings of Rav Kook in Israel at the beginning of the formation of the state. He shared a commentary from Rab Lowe of Prague, who said that the reason the number 7 is so sacred in Jewish tradition is that it represents all the sides of a three-dimensional cube. I guess a cube is three-dimensional, bear with me, as well as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, everything in between. And indeed, this week we start reading again a book collectively as a community. I'm curious to hear what you're reading in the comments. And I wanted to share that we as a community are reading Bereshit again as a setting for this next prayer. In place of our Ma'ariv, our Avim prayer, Roll into Dark, words from this week's Torah portion. There was evening, there was morning, a first day.
Vayar Elohim et kol asher hasa, v'hine tov me'od. Vayar Elohim et kol asher hasa, v'hine tov me'od. There was evening, there was morning. There was evening, there was morning. There was evening, there was morning. There was evening, there was morning.
A special thanks to everyone who participates in these music videos. If you want to see yourself, if you want to hear yourself, if you enjoy one of our compilations, we would love that. Simply send me an email, shoot Leslie or Rabbi Locketz an email, and we'd love to include you. I hope you will all sing with us as we continue on page 34 with words of Shema Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'aderech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vitem kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Eloechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. We're trying some special things to show you that Tim and I are indeed in the same space, though we are slightly different directions, slightly different angles from our camera. I think I'm still a little bit taller than Tim, even though you may not see it. He's certainly a little bit better looking than I am, which you can certainly see. But we are excited to continue testing out this technology from the Beit HaT'filah so that we're ready to welcome you back. And right now, we welcome you to sing with us on page 40, our Mi Chamocha praise.
Kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedaba kodesh. Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedaba kodesh. No vatilo, oseh pele. No vatilo, oseh pele. Adonai, Yimlok leolam vaed. Malchutecha ra'uvanecha, ukei hayam לפני משה ומרים. זהלינו ואמרו, זהלינו ואמרו, אדוני, ימלוך לעולם ועד. נורא תהילות, עושה פלא, נורא תהילות, עושה פלא, אדוני, ימלוך לעולם ועד.
It is wonderful to hear what so many of you are reading. It looks like Cast is not only a New York Times bestseller, but a Temple Emanuel bestseller, and I'm eager to pick it up once Emily is done. The first off the tee, though, looks like one that we all need to read, and I encourage you to continue posting. What are you reading? What for fun? What for inspiration during these challenging times? On page 43, we ask for God's shelter of peace and protection. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. And we continue with a recognition of the blessing of Shabbat, words of Vishamru on page 44.
וישמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת בתורת עולם. וישמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת בתורת עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. וישמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת בתורתם עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. וישמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם עולם. וביום השביעי שבת יבני נפש, שבת יבני נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. וישמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם עולם. וישמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם עולם.
The central portion of our worship together, the Amidah, page 46. And just a reminder, as if the weather, the rain, the little bit of chill in the air wasn't enough, we have crossed over into winter. And so we insert that prayer on page 50. Page 46, we continue together. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot B'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh hakol atah Rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim. Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, melech memit umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata l'chayot hakol. Baruch ata Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yalu chasela. Baruch ata Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. And to these prayers of our tradition and the silent prayers we add in our hearts, we ask that these words may be acceptable to the God who brings peace on us all. We continue on page 62 with words of Yehiyu Leratzon.
Yehiyu Leratzon, Imre fi, V'hegyon libi lefanecha. 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 Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, go'ali. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, go'ali. Yehiyu leratzon, imre fi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Yehiyu leratzon, imre fi, v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, v'go'ali. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, v'go'ali.
On page 253, we find words of Mishaberach Lecholim. I have to tell you, I'm a fan of roller coasters. I love going up the hill. I love the anticipation as you're at the top, and then that feeling, that whoosh, as you go back to the bottom. I'm not a big fan of the roller coaster we are riding now. If you look at cases in the United States, we went up, we came down, we went up, we came down. We're going the wrong way as we pray for healing of mind, of body. Those who have been impacted, those who have been affected by COVID-19, those who have caught this virus, those who still struggle to recover, those who are suffering mentally. Continue to do our part, God willing, to prevent the spread of this deadly disease. And I invite you at this time to add those of whom you are thinking, those of your loved ones, those you may share out loud, those you may wish to put in the comment box, that we might concert our efforts, our energies, our healing, and our prayers for a refuah shlema of mind, body, and spirit. Page 250.
May the source of strength bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishabera imoteinu mekor Abraham seed of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Have you ever tried to assemble a piece of IKEA furniture, or put together a 1,000-piece Lego set, or add a new user to a computer, or bake chocolate chip cookies? And have you done any of those things without an instruction manual, or a blueprint, or a protocol, or a recipe? If the answer is yes, you may be like so many of us, myself included, who found out the hard way that the plan, the prescribed order of steps to follow, exists for a reason. In this week's Torah portion, Bereshit, we find the ultimate plan, ordered by day with unique tasks to complete by nightfall. Each day of creation adds new categories of structure and life, building on what came before it. God's plan allowed for each item, each creature, to be created in its appointed time. As we read this portion year after year, I am always struck by the order of things created, especially the timing of when we humans appear on the biblical scene. Why were we created last? Before we jump to the conclusion that God saved the best for last, we first should look at a few theories our tradition puts forth that are worth mentioning. Some of them appear in the Talmudic tractate Sanhedrin. Reason number one, human beings were created last in order to establish God as the sole creator. The rabbis of the Talmud point out that if people had been around from the beginning, let's say if they had been created first, later generations might mistakenly regard creation as a partly human undertaking and not as a wholly divine endeavor. We might accidentally come to believe that we were God's co-creators, so to speak, in the initial work of creating the world. We might incorrectly see a human handprint on God's divine creative work. But aren't we God's partners in the creation of the world? We'll come back to that. Reason number two, to attempt to instill humility within us. In other words, by being created last, we are not to overestimate our importance in the order of creation. If we start to feel superior, if we start to think that we are above all the other creatures, we only need to remind ourselves of our low position in the creation order. As the Talmud states, even a creature as small and as insignificant as the mosquito was created before me. Reason number three, in a different vein, one that does not focus on our perception of ego and self-worth. Our sages tell us that God first created the means of human sustenance, and only then did God create humanity. The implication is that humanity had to be last, to wait until the environment was ready to support human life. Only after there was an earth to stand on, air to breathe, and food to eat could we be brought to life. This theory does support the idea that everything in the world was created for us. Reason number four, God created humanity last, late in the afternoon on Friday, so that Shabbat could be one of humankind's first experiences on earth. Just as Shabbat has a central place in our tradition, a full, complete day of rest was to play a key role in our human and Jewish development as well. Giving God appropriate credit, instilling humility, needing supportive conditions, experiencing Shabbat, all of these seem like good reasons why humanity was created last. But remember that idea of being God's partner? That leads us into another reason, suggesting that God created us last so we could continue the work that God had started. A midrash tells us that when God completed the world, God made everything a little bit incomplete. Instead of making bread grow out of the earth, God made wheat grow so that we might bake it into bread. Why? So that we could become God's partner in the task of completing the work of creation. Our tradition is clear about the distinction between God as the creator and humanity as God's creative partners. As Rabbi Norman Lamb teaches, when God creates, it is called bria, the process of creating ex nihilo, from nothingness. God has no partners in this one-time process. When humanity creates, it is called yitzira, the act of creativity coming to life, both literally and figuratively, as we join God in the ongoing process of creating and recreating the world. We are not co-authors or even able to claim credit for the initial creation of the world, but we do have stake in how everything unfolds. From the moment we entered the scene, what happened next was up to us. This continues to be the case. Each day we wield the brush as we stand in front of an empty canvas. What plan will we follow? What world will we choose to paint? What will a world with our signatures on it look like? Will it be kind, caring, civil, hopeful, just? There is much to be recreated in our world, and as God's partners, our hands are the means to do it. The Torah tells us that at the end of the sixth day, God completed the work and rested. We entered the scene right before Shabbat, and our work was just beginning. Why was humanity created last? To let us view each day as a new beginning, a new creation, a new opportunity to make our world a better place. Each day we stand in front of an empty canvas. What will we create? It is up to us to create the world as we want it to be.
Thank you, Rabbi Locketz. We continue now, page 282, words of Aleinu Leshabeach. Aleinu Leshabeach ladon hakol, lateit gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kgoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpechot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We turn now to words of mourners Kaddish and those we remember in our community and in our lives. We observe the period of Shloshim for Judy Eber and Leonard Roth and mark the yahrzeit, the commemoration of the passing of Lynette Barr, Margaret P. Benotto, Ruth Tract Blaine, Marion Brown, Harry Burston, Jeffrey Kaplan, Sylvia Doniger, Robert Ehrlich, Norman Ettinson, Mildred Fuhr, Sheila Frankel, Naomi Friedman, Loretta Haven, Pearl Beanstalk Kantrowitz, Marie Kaufman, Yetta Kaufman, Lilian Levin, Joseph Maiolo, Charlotte McCaw, Sally Naft, Meyer Rosenthal, Ida Friedman Roy, Anthony Santagati, Terry Lynn Seltzer, Marian Silver, Maurice Sloan, Sylvan Solod, Belle Tachna, Ruben Tannenbaum, David Zaslow. If I have mispronounced the name of a loved one, I apologize, and I invite you to share their name. If there are others whom you are remembering, I wish that you would share their name as well, and I pray that the memories come flooding back. We say, Zichronam livracha, may their memories be an everlasting blessing. Page 294, we find words of our mourner's Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, b'agala v'izman kariv imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach leolam ulalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'miran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May God, who makes peace in the highest of heavens, make peace for us and for all who mourn. And together we say, Amen. A couple of thank yous this evening before our concluding song. A thank you to you, Tim Brogdon, for leading us in music and in prayer. It is good to be back in this space with you. Leslie and Ellen, thank you for the technical expertise and the help putting tonight's service together so that everyone can join us in prayer. Next Shabbat, we hope to be right back here. Rabbi Locketz, Janet Mostow leading us in prayer. And as I'm going to continue to do between now and November 3rd, have you made your plan? Have you cast your ballot? Have you decided if you are requesting a mail-in ballot to vote at your leisure, whether you're going to go in and vote early using that same ballot, whether you feel comfortable going to your polling place on November 3rd? Make a plan. Follow through with that plan. Every vote matters, and as does yours. We live in a fairly pivotal state, a fairly pivotal corner of that state, a pretty important suburb for the entirety of this nation, and we are counting on every vote, every voice to be heard and registered as we continue with our concluding song, our prayer for peace, words of Oseh Shalom.
Oseh Shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Oseh Shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la ya la 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 ya la 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 Yalla yalla la la la. Yalla la yalla la yalla la. Yalla la 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 la. Yalla la yalla la la la. Yalla la yalla la yalla la. Shabbat Shalom.